Hey guys, welcome into History Mondays. I've got the blue on, which means it's comfortable, it's good, we're on solid, safe ground. Today we're part 4 of our Afghanistan war series. We're talking about the rising insurgency and the new Obama administration's sort of tactics and strategy to counter that insurgency and the ultimate failure of it. So, here we go. Alright, so to start this week's episode, let's just do an overview of where we are when Obama comes into power in 2009. So you had the initial invasion of Afghanistan, you had the border problems between Afghanistan and Pakistan where most of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban fighters fled into Pakistan and started launching attacks against the US and Afghan government forces from their base in Pakistan. Alongside this effort, you've got the US's sort of very failed attempt to build a massive bureaucratic centralized Afghanistan government. While all this is happening from 2003 to 2008, 2009, the Taliban are regrouping, right? And they're becoming more and more efficient and effective and deadly in their attacks against US and Afghan government forces. And remember, these attacks serve to undermine the legitimacy of the Afghan government and of the US-led effort in Afghanistan. Because again, if you can't keep your people safe, you're not a very legitimate government, are you? Not only do the Taliban organize sort of very effective attacks, they start to invade and take back parts of Afghanistan, particularly in the eastern and southern parts of Afghanistan. While all this is happening in Afghanistan, you've got a massive US war effort in Iraq, and sort of the focus changes to Iraq, and Afghanistan is sort of forgotten. And so the Taliban keep making more and more incremental gains. They take back more and more ground. And by 2009, you basically have a full-fledged insurgency happening in Afghanistan, with the Taliban taking more and more ground back against Afghan and US forces in the region. And so the Obama administration engages in this massive sort of reevaluation of their strategy and tactics. And the president is presented with two options from this evaluation. The first option is sort of a full-blown counterinsurgency effort. And this is similar to what happens in Iraq in 2007 with the US surge. It means you have a massive influx of US forces, men, and materials, and you go from trying to root out terrorists to literally protecting the population and pushing back the Taliban. And so instead of conducting counterterrorism operations and going into villages, you actually set up bases and small outposts in the village areas, and your main goal is not to capture terrorists, it's to actually protect the infrastructure and the people of Afghanistan. And that creates a harder place for insurgents to operate. It gains back the trust of the local people, and it serves to legitimize the Afghan government's effort. The second option that Obama administration is given is a counterterrorism, is pure counterterrorism, is to pull back even the limited forces we have and just purely focus on counterterrorism and let the Afghanistan regime survive and fall. Now, the argument behind this second strategy is that, look, the U.S. is tired of war. We've been engaged in a war in Afghanistan and Iraq for many, many years. We have sort of battle fatigue. There's not going to be a lot of political will to sort of insert thousands and thousands more troops in. Even the counterinsurgency effort might not work because the Afghan government, we don't know if we can trust it if they'll ever, get to where they need to be. So all we need to focus on as the U.S. is denying terrorists a safe haven in Afghanistan. That's our only option. Remember, this goes back to what I was talking about in the previous episode. Why did we invade in the first place? Did we invade to set up a massive centralized government, or did we invade purely to deny terrorists a safe haven in Afghanistan? What President Obama ends up doing is he actually chooses a hybrid approach. He kind of goes for not full-out counterinsurgency, but much more than counterterrorism. Now, anyone can tell you that some sort of mixed viewpoint about the objective, it's kind of half in, half out, isn't actually the best way to go about it. If you're in, you need to be all in. If you're out, you need to be all out, particularly in something as sort of full frontal and bombastic as warfare, right? You need a full commitment, or you need to pull out, and people need to know. They need to know where you stand. But this actually isn't the biggest sort of argument or criticism that we have on this channel against the Obama administration. The biggest criticism is, with this influx and surge of troops, Obama put a strict pull-out date, a strict withdrawal date. He said, by 2011, we're going to withdraw from Afghanistan, most of our forces. Now, this is a really, really bad strategy, really bad thing to announce to the world, right? Because if you're the Taliban and you say, okay, it's 2009, the U.S. is about to pour on a lot more invasion forces, but crucially, we know they're going to leave in 2011. What you can do is you can just trade land for time, because you know in a few years' time the American army is going to leave because the American people don't have the political will to support the war efforts. You can just keep retreating, baby. You can just keep walking right out, and you can go all the way back to Pakistan if you have to, because you know in 2 years' time you can just come back and the U.S. won't be there. And so that was the biggest problem that many people had, and I think in hindsight has proven really, really destructive to the war effort, to Obama's strategy in Afghanistan. I can understand why he didn't want to opt for the full counterinsurgency option because of the whole political will issue. But again, you need to decide. If you're going to decide to be in, you need to be in. Out, you need to be out. But whatever you decide, you don't need to put a fixed term limit on this. And so when President Obama institutes this sort of surge, the surge does work. It does have a lot of effect. The Taliban are driven from their grounds. Some of the security and the legitimacy of the Afghan government is reinstituted. But in 2011, when we pulled out all the way up until today, the Taliban are taking more and more and more and more ground, right? Because there isn't that massive counterinsurgency force in the area to protect Afghanistan. The Taliban control more territory right now today than they have since 2001 when we invaded. That kind of paints failure over both President Bush and President Obama. Bush, because Bush again engaged in a massive state building effort that should never have been engaged in. The country was not ready for it, did not have the institutions or the history to actually engage in such a state building effort. And a failure for Obama because he put an end term on the sort of deployment of forces. And so what can the realists take away from this? I think it's pretty obvious. Never put an end term on the deployment of forces when you're battling an insurgency, because all the insurgents have to do is go into hiding, and when you leave, they come back out. Okay guys, that's it for today. If you like the video, share it. If you really like it, subscribe to the channel. And remember, reality always trumps ideology, and never give insurgents an end date to your occupation.